All right, Jess, let's go for it.
Let's go. All right, thank you guys all for being here. So today we are going to be talking about MSP account growth, particularly around cross-selling, upselling, and whitespace. So I know we do have a few of our customers on our call as well, and some new lovely faces. So we'll have Ryan and James talk about the importance of these core aspects for MSPs, and we'll dabble a little bit in some of the aspects that we bring from our platform BeeCastle. So let's kick it off. Here are our lovely speakers, Ryan and Fuzzy from 360 Consulting, and James Davis from Paxay, and myself, Jessica from BeeCastle. Okay, so how today's going to go, we have 5 discussion topics and 5 best practices with some tool sets and examples from both the gentlemen and from the platform as well. Okay. We welcome all questions. We do have a Q&A box that you guys can, while live, ask away, and we will have 15 minutes at the end for any thoughts, questions, stories that you wanted to bring up. Would love and welcome them all. So, BeeCastle, we are an actionable data analytics plugin. We connect with ConnectWise, as well as Data Autotask, Halo PSA, and Microsoft 365 as well. So within BeeCastle, we have quite a few core aspects. We have our whitespace finder, just to really dig deep into, what do your clients currently consume from your stacks, your relationship keeper. So you guys, speaking with those important customers as well as all your customers. We don't want anyone to have a flight risk as well. Revenue analyzing. So how is your business tracking? Are you hitting your goals? Opportunity assist, which is a big one. So sometimes finding opportunities can be a little bit hard. We have multiple tools in the platform, such as prospecting, which we'll touch on today, as well as the whitespace finder. Profit Booster, which is quite new. We now have live profitability reports, both on an account level and a customer level. And lastly, Profit Track. So moving on to our first topic. So growth doesn't always have to come from new client acquisitions. Growth can come from multiple aspects in the business. Ryan, James, where do you find that MSPs find a lot of growth in their business that's not just from new client acquisitions?
JD, do you want to go first?
Sure. There's a few areas here, and this is a really good place to start, because often when I'm talking to MSPs and other small technology businesses, the conversation keeps going around, I need new leads, but we're often not managing our existing client base and farming that and managing the revenue growth internally. And I've experienced myself personally and coaching a lot of people through it. I've seen people double their businesses just by better managing this revenue opportunity in their business, and a lot of that comes firstly from understanding what you do and deliver. If you don't have that sort of white space concept to start with, you don't have any control over what you're selling. And I think I could talk about this all day. I think that's a good point for Fuzz to jump in quickly and add his 2 cents for this. But I think that's the starting point.
Well, if you think about it, the cheapest sale is to an existing customer. If you have to go out and win a new customer or find a new customer every single time you want to sell something, that's a very costly exercise. And yes, you need to do a certain amount of marketing and business development, and we'll come to that at some point. But realistically, selling a product you have to an existing customer by far is the cheapest sale you can ever do. So that's a perfect outcome for here, or example of this this topic is, yeah, if you can sell a new product or a new line or something new to each one of your existing customers, how much revenue increase does that give you? And that's really you're just having existing meetings or mentioning it to existing clients and telling them the story behind it. It's not hard. So that's why, again, just put it there, growth doesn't have to come from client acquisition, and it shouldn't. There's a certain amount that should be coming from your customers naturally. It should be coming from you adding or increasing new lines or new sections to your business. So a perfect example of that 3-4 years ago would have been going from a standard managed services offering to a security offering, or there's still plenty of MSPs and TSPs doing that now. They're starting to add cybersecurity in. So you're not going and selling cybersecurity to brand new customers. The first thing you do is go and sell it back to your existing customer base. No different than connectivity, telephony, any of those types of things. If you add a new line or a new bow or a new feather to your cap, that's perfect to go and sell that to your existing customers. It's the first thing you would ever do. And again, I think there's probably the white space reporting here in BeeCastle makes a big advantage. There we go. Perfect. There's one prepared earlier. If it can, I'll let Jess talk to it in a second, but this is a perfect example of, hang on, what aren't you selling to a bunch of these clients and what would that look like? So go for it, Jess.
Yeah, just as Ryan was mentioning, white space, it can be a bit of a tricky thing. I'm sure a few people on this call created a few Excel spreadsheets in their time, had it crash on them. And that's where BeeCastle sort of jumped in and created a matrix. We have three. We have a product and additions white space, an agreement white space, and a product and additions with your agreements as well. And as you can see here, it breaks down your subcategories, shows you what is active as well, and then where are the gaps in there. You know, key pool, they have Microsoft 365, but they don't have web conferencing or cloud hosting. As well as these little buttons here, we can pop open and actually push an opportunity back into ConnectWise and make it actionable and to work on it for the sales team or account management team as well.
So what I'd add to this conversation, like it's good to have a tool to be able to do this, but often, you know, like what Fuzz was saying around the different potential products that we could sell, and maybe we should call them solutions rather than products, because that's what we do. Let's sell it with labor and things like that. Is very few of us actually quantify it. So I'm just picking some random numbers out of my head. Let's just assume we're going to sell something for $10 a month. If you've got 1,000 endpoints, that's $10,000 of recurring revenue right there. That's $120,000 a year. Is that worth the effort to then go and push it out to your clients? And I found when you actually quantify the opportunity, it helps drive that execution, because often we take sales as a piecemeal approach, and because we don't quantify and actually see the opportunity overall, we then piecemeal the sale of it. So we might only sell it to 10 clients, and we do it very easily, but then we move on to the next thing, and our other 90 clients that are there, they don't have it. So that's where this revenue growth opportunity is there. And if you think you add up all the potential things that you could sell, and let's just say it's $100 sort of per seat here, and you've got 1,000 seats, that's $100,000 in recurring revenue a month. Like that's where the needle gets moved a lot. So I think just starting with understanding what you've got and then quantifying it's a huge first step.
And look, not every customer is going to take you up on that offer anyway. But again, it's if you think of the 80-20 rule, if you're looking at 100,000 a month of recurring potential, let's say if 80% took it up, well, that's still a pretty big number. Another 960,000 or nearly $1 million worth of ARR for you just there. So yeah, it's a good way of thinking about it, James.
All right, moving on. And this is a big one. I hear a lot of conferences we go to. Traditional account management versus data-driven account management. I think there's sometimes a bit of a divide in the industry of where we sit in there. Guys, where do you think the industry is, and where it's heading in relation to account management?
This is a fun one. Well, the reality is 95, 98, 99% of people just do, well, hang on, let's come back a step. How many people are actually doing account management in the first place that isn't just the old random phone call to a client or whatnot? The whole concept behind a QBR or a TBR or something like that, like it's, they were the kind of the way we kind of started putting it together. But if you take it back another step further, how do we do it? Okay, we have A customers, and we'll go through stacking or ranking customers later, but you've got A, B, and C customers, and you had to send out an account manager to go and visit them X amount of times and whatnot. That's traditional account management. It's been around for hundreds, if not probably thousands of years. It's like whoever's buying from you, you go and visit more and hope they buy more, or you keep them happy. It's pretty simple. So I would say that to me is traditional account management pretty easily there. Versus data-driven management is quite different, and I think there's been some businesses do it well in certain industries for years, but I think it's the technology space is probably coming to realise that some of the better ones are already starting to do it. There's plenty that are still even just kicking off with traditional account management, but the data-driven management makes a big difference. Who's buying what from you? Do you, like, again, you know which customers are buying all of your product offerings from you. They're the ones you want to be having relationships with. Yes, it's a different relationship. You're not there to try and sell them something every time. You're there to make sure they're happy, keep the relationship going well, versus those that have bigger opportunities sitting them, and that's a different type of relationship. And then there's also, on top of that, which customers are actually taking up a kind of virtual CIO or are really engaged with you. They're the types of customers that, again, if you can quantify that engagement, makes a big difference for you.
I think it's really important, because I think with everything we do, like we do everything in this industry, we get a term and we make it to basically the lowest common denominator, so the term doesn't mean anything anymore. And there's a place for account management, and I see that as a bit like what you were saying there, Fuzz. It's a bit more transactional. It's really just keeping a conversation going, and you're trying to basically manage them to compliance in a lot of ways in the MSP space, with like what you spoke about, the BTR, the business technology review type stuff. The data-driven relationship management is a very different concept that most MSPs aren't ready for mentally. And a lot of the time, maybe the business isn't set up that way, and we're not transacting with the clients that way, and the clients don't want to transact that way as well. Let alone when you start opening up the whole VCIO thing. I won't go on a rant because I'd take up the whole webinar, but you know, that's not a sales function. That's not what we're talking about today. Anytime that we're talking VCIO, that's high-level consulting stuff that you should be charging for.
Yes.
So when I see the data-driven relationship management, is often we're coming at from our approach to what can we sell. Actually, what's more important on the data-driven relationship is that actually we're setting out success criteria that we're measuring, that we've agreed to with our clients, of what are we doing to help you drive this, and what's your strategic objectives. It's not getting into setting the strategy out and setting out the technology. It's really working on that relationship, that partnership, to know where we sit, and then use measurements to see what we're providing is driving and changing those objectives that we're trying to achieve. And it's a very different headspace. And to be honest, we don't really have the sales talent to do that a lot of the time either, out of the box. So very, very different. And I think you've got to know what you're doing. It's probably my advice.
What would your advice, guys, be for MSPs that are starting sales teams and, you know, bringing in that traditional account management or trying to move to a data relationship management? What would your first sort of action be for them to start to understand, to bring that into their business?
Yeah, this is a religious debate here. Next, we'll get on to BDMs versus account managers. Look, I think having an account manager come in is probably I would say is probably the better option. I think a BDM, a true BDM is probably fraught in most MSPs or TSPs, because at the end of the day, a BDM or a true BDM is going to go and sell things. Whether you want them to sell something or not, they are going to sell something. And it's generally probably not something you don't want them to sell. So the first step is often is again that relationship. Again, it's in smaller managed service providers and TSPs, it's owner-led sales is probably still the most effective, and it's what it is in the majority of smaller companies. And why is that? Because it's relationships. They're not out there selling something to every single customer. They're out forming a relationship with each one of those customers. And then the customer has a need, so they fulfill that need, or they make a recommendation. But because they're trusted through that relationship, the customer will then actually buy or acquire or take up what they're suggesting. So that's where it works. So I think the first step is an account manager. But again, that account manager, first of all, should be just building relationships. They should be, ultimately, they should have a coffee budget that they should be spending every single month, not on themselves, but on clients. So that means they're actually getting face time with the clients, or delivering donuts, or delivering cupcakes, or whatever. They're out seeing customers face to face and having those direct relationships. Yes, the world has changed a little bit. We've got Zoom and Teams and all of those types of things now, but it's not the same as being in front of someone. Yes, you can still have one of these types of calls, and it does work to a point. But the minute someone's finished, they hit the leave or the exit button, and they're on to the next thing. That's the next thing they have to deal with. So they've forgotten half of the relationship right then and there, rather than them walking back to their desk, or walking back from a meeting room, or walking back from a cafe, having time to actually think about what they just spoke about and what they should do with that information. So I think an account manager first, and I think an account manager should be, to answer Jess your question, should be building relationships, and then at that point in time starting to talk about again the stats and what the deliverables and what they're doing and what they're seeing other customers do, turning that into a little bit of farming at that point in time. But they've already built that relationship with the customer first.
I'll come from a different perspective. I think irrelevant of who you need at the time, and it's different for everyone. And like Buzz says, we could turn this webinar into a big debate about who to hire first and all that kind of stuff. You need to build a framework out, and the framework will look differently depending on your maturity level. So if we use those examples around where we're doing the traditional account management, the data-driven relationship management, up to much more consultative type engagement, they require a much different framework to be applied, so you've got consistency in your business, and to set up whoever you hire. Because unless, to Fuzzy's point, unless you're the owner and you're doing it all, you need processes, you need procedures, you need collateral, you need knowledge transfer there for anyone to be successful. So if you're trying to build that, let's just start with the traditional account management type role that most of us do, and most of us are going to hire at this point. You need the basic stuff of like, well, what do we sell? What's our white space look like? How do I have those conversations and build the relationships up? All of those kinds of things we need to build out. We can't just hire an account manager and go out, throw them in the deep end, and expect them to succeed, because I know
which is what most people still do, mind you.
It's very often to say that happens, that succeeds very often. You might get people that seem like they're succeeding, but when you actually look at the metrics and the measurements of what they're actually doing and delivering, they're often not very productive in actually generating what they're supposed to. So I think it's knowing where you're at, and then making sure you've got that maturity level to actually succeed at that, and then look at what's next and build that out. That'd be my advice.
I think just had a question. Chat. Back to it. Right. Moving on. Also, just wanted to touch in here for some data-driven insights. In the platform, we have a cumulative profitability for each individual customer. So you can see how this customer is growing with you, if they're stagnant, if they're dropping off. as well as a breakdown of their complete revenue history, agreements, non-agreement revenue, and then straight back down into, you know, your subcategories of what they're consuming and what they're not consuming as well, to really make those decisions for customers. Moving on. All right, another fun topic. So how to tier your customers to achieve focus. I know MSPs, we all do it slightly different. Some do it via the industry, via revenue is a very big one. But how do you guys recommend tiering your customers, or having them in buckets?
Well, you mean you don't just get the customer list and put a letter A, B, C, or D next to each of them and then be done? You mean there's more to it than that, Jess? Come on.
See which one they fall into, right?
I think everyone generally goes by revenue. Historically, that's how everyone's done it. Your A customers are spending $50,000 a month with you or something like that, or again, depending on your size. That was kind of what ours were. The Bs were then spending X amount of recurring with you. Cs were then on an agreement, but were not actively engaged that much. And then Ds was kind of everything else and whatnot. Like it's, again, it changes over time. I think, and I've had some interesting viewpoints put to me over the years on this as well, in that, and I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure of the best way of doing it anymore. In that, I had a great comment from someone in the US that basically says, if a customer buys everything that they can possibly buy from you, then are they not an A customer because you've completed them? You've sold everything you can to them and there's nothing else to be sold. It's more about just maintaining relationship now, versus a customer that buys one thing out of your 5 offerings. That may be a C customer. Now, don't get me wrong, there's probably more opportunity there for revenue growth in that type of customer. So it may not be just a necessary ABC thing. It could be that, yeah, some of your best customers are you look after, you've got a good relationship with, but there's not a lot of growth available in those customers. But they also keep the doors open every day. They pay you every month on time, and they look after you very well, and vice versa. But yeah, they're the ones that keep you around.
This comes down to what you're trying to achieve as well. I think that everyone just defaults to revenue because that's the easiest. Chuck everyone in a spreadsheet, sort by revenue, there's your tiering, and just make up some brackets.
Yep.
And that can be a legitimate way, but that's a very transactional way of thinking of. I personally, I'm more of the thinking around what you were finishing up there, Buzz, around like, how do they engage with us? Are they buying everything that they can from us? Are they engaged on the right level of contracts? Like all of that kind of stuff is how I would go at it once you're at a certain maturity level. Yep. And if you are using dollars in the tier people, revenue is relevant. You could have a client spending $100,000 a month, but they're only generating you $1,000 in profit. Like that, where you might have a $3,000 client generating you $2,000 in profit. Like, who's more important? And that's what we often forget in these sort of client tiering and the relationship management stuff, is actually how are they engaging with us? Are they our ideal client? Like, we all have that, that client profile that we all say we want people from 20 to 250 seats that value technology. Well, if we boil it down, like, apart from that, it's not unique, but like, if we actually boil it down, that valuing technology is those attributes that we're just talking about. It's, do they spend when they need to? Will they listen to our advice? Do they engage with us on things? When you actually extrapolate that out, they're our A clients, compared to, say, a D client is someone that's always slow to pay their bills. They argue about everything. Everything's a grind. If you start to view it in that way, it's a lot easier to look at sacking clients that don't fit. You get more deliberate. It's about spending the right time with the right clients, and that's where the growth comes with as well, because you're a lot more precious with your time, where you're spending it, to actually get an ROI on that.
And you can take that one step further. It's not necessarily an arrogance, but it becomes a confidence that, hey, to us, an A-level customer looks like this. And you actually tell a new prospect or a new company you're speaking to that, yeah, this is how we value relationships. If you engage us, if we are aware of things that are happening in your business, if you share your business plan and we help you build budgets for the technology, if you, all of those things, and you pay on time and this, that, and the other, and you don't second guess us and all those types of things, you can easily define what that looks like and explain to a new potential customer or to any of your existing customers what actually makes an A-level customer for your business. We actually started that, we had transitioned to that way, was again, get out of revenue, but it was a case of, yeah, who would engage with you? We had a kind of a customer maturity level program. So it was kind of like the OML for the IT company, but it was the customer maturity, and that had other things in there like the pain to profit ratio. So yeah, a customer might make you a hell of a lot of profit, but if they're so painful to deal with, are you actually burning out your staff, and are you losing good staff because of the way the customer is treating you? So on the other hand, though, if a customer you're making a bunch of profit on and they're really great to deal with, then again, you want to duplicate that. You want to find more customers like that, or you want to look at your existing customer base and say, how many customers have we got that we could turn into customers like that? And that makes a really great IT company with really profitable and easy to run.
I suppose that sort of jumps back to the being a bit data driven behind that relationship, and wanting to be selling a solution, not being transactional with your customer, and being a part of their business, not just selling to them.
That's right.
100%. And this is where, again, like I'm using the word framework a lot. Without having that framework of like the A to B to C to D, I used to have an E, because if there's an E, they shouldn't be a client. So having that framework of what are the qualities in those ranges, and most often, a bit to your point, Fuzz, most often people would come into a C level as a new client because it's all new. They could go away. They could turn into a D client to an E client because they really don't engage very well, and all the talk they had originally fades away. Or we're doing the right thing and they're engaging as well, and they flow up to that A. It's, and often too as well, because we've never said what good client engagements look like, and we've set the expectation with our client base. A lot of our existing legacy clients don't actually know what good looks like anymore. They've just learnt from how we've dealt with them over the past 10, 20 years. So it could be on us to then retrain and re-engage with the clients in a different way to bring them up to more than likely them being Bs and As with no problem. They're just not used to the way that we operate anymore.
And how many people have actually had that frank conversation with those clients and said, hey, it's not great. This is not a great working relationship. We want to fix this. Do you want to fix it? And really have the guts or the confidence to actually have that conversation with the client and be willing for them to leave.
Let's be honest, we've gone through this. Most clients, when we sit down and talk to them and like have a good conversation with them, most of them want to be engaged with us, and they will reframe and we'll get a much better engagement out of it. We just, to your point, not confident enough to actually drive that conversation.
No, I totally agree with all of that. In light of it, we do in BeeCastle help with a baseline of framing, tiering the customers based on revenue. But that's just a starting point for MSPs that aren't sort of in that cadence just yet. But that's why we have other dashboards where you can get those data and decide where your customers are going to be and create your baseline for them. So you can change each of your tiers within BeeCastle. Okay. Another one. So
you're bringing out all the good ones.
I know, all the hot topics. Okay. Should hunting and farming be split, or should one person do it all? How do you see the best practice in it? Like, is one person, is it generally they're really good at hunting or they're really good at farming, or do you have those hybrids?
Just hire unicorns. They'll solve all your problems.
Yeah.
Webinar done.
Your rainbows.
It's that simple.
Rainbows and unicorn.
They're there's more than just hunting and farming in this as well. Like, without taking it off too much of a tangent, there's lots of roles in the sales and marketing team that do require different personalities to succeed at them. But if we focus on the hunting and farming, it's very rare that you'll ever get someone that can do a hybrid well. It's a unicorn. You need to work out what you're trying to achieve, whether it's farming, which is a lot more the account management and relationship, compared to hunting, where you're going out there and, like what Fuzz was talking about before, someone that can either build and start relationship connections to pass it on, or close new business. Even those are two different roles. So there's a lot to unpack here, but I would start off, there's no such thing as a hybrid, no matter what someone says.
Yeah, they're really hard to find. Look, there is the odd one out there that can do both, but let's be honest, they're really good at one and they don't suck at the other, is probably what it is. If they're not probably great at both, and that's probably the reality of it. I know that historically, that's what I was always trying to find in my old MSP. If I had my time again, I would not go down that path, to be very clear. I would suggest they are distinctly two different roles, but again, Helena put a really good comment in the chat as well, because it's accurate into where I would be talking and about to talk about. It depends on the size of your business. Again, it could be as simple as, again, in a sub 10 or a sub 20 seat MSP, TSP, that you could start from, okay, let the business owner still go out and create those first relationships. And the business owner, again, through owner-led sales, be that BDM to start with, and let an account manager look after your existing clients. Now, most small MSPs are going to not want to do it that way, because they'll want to send someone else out to go and speak to everyone else, because it's not something they really enjoy doing. But the reality is they are the best at it. No one's ever going to sell your business, your vision, and what you want in life better than you. So that's why I think that's how I would suggest doing it. I think they are definitely split roles in anything above a 20 seat or 50 seat MSP. Yeah, you're going to have multiple account managers, and you might have one BDM or two BDMs. You're probably going to have 3 to 4 account managers for every BDM, would be my gut feel. But you've also got to, and this is something I learned probably necessarily the hard way, but learned over the last couple of years. Good BDMs don't know how to knock down doors. They don't know how to find really good leads. That's where your marketing team and your marketing function needs to create or find leads and find opportunities for the BDMs to go into and actually close. They're great at forming that relationship. They're great at knocking down the door once they know which door they need to knock on, to be clear. Here, that's the differentiator. So again, I'd say this could also be said about really good BDMs. Again, might not suck at actually finding doors to knock down, but to get the most out of them, they need a big list of clientele or a big list of opportunities that they need to go after, and they'll be really efficient at doing that. But yes, I would say they need to be split roles. And yeah, what the hardest bit is, can you afford it? That's the biggest thing in smaller MSPs and TSPs. They want to try and find the unicorn, the one that can do both. And guilty as charged, tried it for many years. You do get the odd one, as I said, you do get the odd one that's really good at account management that doesn't suck at BDM, or someone that's really good at BDM, but they're not the greatest account management. So yeah, you can try and find someone like that, but just be very clear very quickly, you need to cover their shortcomings on the other side. So it might be a 12-month or a 6-month piece where you try it, but know very quickly you're going to add a second person, and that's going to give you the best outcome. I know if I started again, I'd start with a couple of BDMs really quickly.
Yeah, and this is too, like, even before the account management is like a small business is owner-led sales. Like, unless you really know what you're doing and like you've learned all the mistakes, Fuzz, like you said, if you're going to start again, you start with a whole bunch of BDMs in the first place. So would I, but that's not how we organically learn and grow our businesses. And once you're moving, don't go out and hire a bunch of BDMs, because it'll not work out well. But as we're going through that journey of owner-led sales, the first person, not even an account manager, is hire a sales support officer.
Yeah.
Like you go out and do the new business work and the account management, and have someone behind the scenes to do the quoting and the appointment arranging and all of that stuff, so you can just talk to people. And then the next step would be the account manager, and then you grow out the account management team until you can get to the point of a BDM. And the reason of that, like exactly what you said, Fuzz, firstly, you're the business owner, you're the passionate one, you're going to sell your business like no one else can, but you're not going to be able to afford it. Two ways. Either you can hire a really good BDM that actually kicks goals and your operations isn't going to be able to keep up, and one side or the other is going to lose the plot, or you're more than likely not going to hire someone that's going to move the needle and you're burning cash. Like you probably don't need to look at a BDM for a traditional technology services business until you're 5 million plus.
Yep.
You're not, if you, again, using data, you're not looking to get that many clients at a time. Like most of us can only really handle one ideal new client once a quarter, maybe once every month or two. So we don't actually need to do a whole that much activity. We just think we do. So getting the data back and like actually mapping that out also helps with this thought process.
Yep. I could definitely tell a few more stories on that, but I'm mindful of time and getting to Q&A. So
Punko just wrote in the chat that James and Ryan, they've split the roles into 3. Ones who are good at hunting, ones who are good at closing, and ones who are better at farming. Typically, if we're paying 200K OTE, what would you expect sales revenue from that person?
the funny part is, and if that's Patrick, you're talking about from a BDM, the interesting part is, and I've done the numbers with a client in the last couple of weeks, a lot of times someone like that it takes nearly 2 years for a break even on that role. It takes time, and even sometimes it's a 3-year ROI, and it's especially if you're starting from a zero base. If you're starting from an existing customer base and whatnot, and you can grow from it, then you've already got profitability and whatnot to handle. But if you're starting from a clean slate and a new base, yeah, I've looked at the spreadsheets and built out and through another program, saw that a couple of weeks ago. But even prior to that, I was working with a client on it, and it was at least 2 years before you actually got an ROI on a really good BDM, and it's quite scary when you look at that. So I would suggest at a 200 OTE. Again, I've not looked at the numbers of the spreadsheets in front, so I'd expect them to be bringing in $1 million at least to $1.2 million worth of rev each year. Now, again, that's going to be a certain amount of that's going to be product and whatnot. That's not all recurring. If they could do that in recurring, that'd be absolutely fantastic. But you'd be breaking your business really quickly, and that's what James said earlier. I talk about it's a triangle. You either have a sales problem, a service problem, or a finance problem, and you literally you fix one and it moves to another part of the triangle. You fix that and you move to another part of the triangle. Now I can tell you, it doesn't matter what size you are. You could be $100 million business. You still have that same triangle. It just keeps moving the plate, moving the location, and that's how you grow. You fix one, you fix a problem at 100,000 or 150,000 of rev, and you go to the next one, you solve that, and now you get to 250, 300, then you get to $1 million, then you get to 1.5, and you just keep fixing the problem, and you keep growing as it happens. So Pancho said there for 200,000 on target earnings, they'd expect $2 million at a minimum, so a 10 to 1, 10 times revenue, which I would be behind. I definitely agree. Just you got to find the ones that can do that though. There's lots that will sell you that they can do it. The catch is with any of those types of roles, it can take 6 months before you even find out whether they're good or bad. So at that point in time, it's a $100,000 risk on a 200 OTE. It's 100,000 to give it a try. And normally they're not as good as what they sell you on. They can sell you really well, but yeah, they may not be as great with the clients.
I'd 100% agree. And like I can talk to industry stats. $2 million, like there's very few BDMs that are generating $2 million revenue in a year in the industry. Like we get to see sort of the numbers of sales ratios and stuff. The industry average of sort of best practice is probably 3 times their annual salary OTE in recurring revenue. So that goes to the point of what Fuzz is saying is generally on top of that 600K that they would generate in the monthly recurring of managed services, then they'd have another 600K that they generate out of projects and stuff. So there's ideals that we want to aim for, and then there's a bit of reality of what people actually achieve at that point.
Which at that point in time, James, it's still $8,000 a month of reoccurring every month that they have to sell. So again, that sounds simple until you go and start landing 8,000 a month of reoccurring every single month. And it's great for the first month. It's exciting. The second month, it's like, wow, this person's great or girl's great. And it's not where I'm going with this, to be clear. But after the second month, it's like you're still onboarding the first customer at 8,000 a month. And then there comes the third month where you win something. It's like, oh crap, we're still onboarding the first month, the first customer. We have barely started the second one and we've won a third one. So that's where the wheels fall off. So that's where you said it earlier, James, and I've agreed for years that one good customer every quarter, I would take every day of the week than trying to bring on a new customer every month, because most MSPs and CSPs are not built to take on that amount of new business.
And it shouldn't be an excuse to not go out and get business. I hear owners all the time of, oh, if I drive too much sales, I'll break my business. The average MSP, you're not going to be able to drive enough sales to break your business. But when you get a good BDM, you're going to break your business. So I think there's a difference of that perception there.
And you let us also put a question there around margin. And to be honest with you, I think it's 100% should be margin. You know, it's gross margin dollars is what actually makes the business work, and is what makes the world turn. So I'm 100% behind margin. Everything for us on commissioned in our old MSP was all on gross margin. Everything was the account managers, the BDMs, all of that was all on gross margin dollars, not about the revenue. The revenue is vanity, profit sanity, cash flow is king, and gross margin feeds into that second and third very importantly. I don't care about the revenue, I care about the profit. It should only be about gross margin, to be honest with you.
Gross margin is very important, especially within MSPs. All right, moving on. We're getting a little bit closer to time, so I'll just jump to our third topic. Fifth, sorry. I haven't had a coffee this morning. Okay. Sort of into that topic of selling and BDMs and farming. Upselling and cross-selling. What do you guys think really works well in the industry, and what doesn't? And what piece of advice would you give to, maybe the smaller end of the MSPs and that larger end?
I don't think people realize it. I don't think it's just bolt-ons and add-ons. It's okay. You're selling Office 365. Well, are you backing it up somewhere? Like there's the debate that Microsoft backs it up. Yeah, but it's not until you actually need to go and restore something and you realize how long that process takes to get something out of Microsoft, ergo weeks. Ergo, I've had times where Microsoft after 3 weeks couldn't restore the data in a HR section of SharePoint, and a bunch of customers' old HR section just disappeared. Yes, at that point in time, you realize you need external backup. And it's a perfect example here. It's like, okay, well, can you easily identify all the customers buying 365 from you that already have backup? Great, they're not part of your opportunity. How many people are buying 365 from you that are not backing up? There we go. That's a perfect upsell. Do you want fries with that? It works. It's been done for years because it works.
What doesn't work is not doing it. Like there's a lot of different methods in this, and they all work in different ways. And a lot of the methodology comes down to your culture in the business, but not doing it is never going to get results. And that's the default for most technology businesses. It's just we're so anti-sales that we think anytime we're going to the client with an upsell or a cross-sell, that we're trying to sell the client, and we're not a sales organization, and sales is a dirty word. What you've got to flip the whole thought process around upsell and cross-sell is to helping the client actually maintain modern technology standards. That's all we're doing. Is like your example there perfectly for the M365 backups, Fuzz. Perfect example. It's wrong of us not to go to the clients and say you need this because of the Microsoft shared responsibility.
Yep.
It's They don't back it up. They clearly say they don't back it up. All they do is provide an operational platform. They'll get it back up to functioning. You're responsible for your own data. Right there, we're not going to our clients and saying, you need this M365 backup solution. You're doing a disservice. And that's pretty much everything that we do in MSPs. We're not actually selling people stuff for the sake of selling people. We're not that kind of industry. We're very much focused on doing what's right for the client and getting them up to that sort of compliance level for security, making sure their data is protected, and making sure they're productive and they can leverage technology in their business. And if you take that approach and remove that, you're just going back to Fuzz's point very early on, especially with like the owner-led sales. If you just go to a client and recommend something, 9 times out of 10 at least, they're just going to do it because they trust you as that level of advisor saying that they need it, so well, they must need it. But if we're not communicating with the client, not sitting down with them and giving them recommendations, we're never going to get it. Clients aren't going to come and ask for 365 backup.
That's right.
Around
And it's no different than
education.
just backup's the easiest one to say, but voice is another one. Okay, how many people are you spending selling 365 to, and do you want Teams voice? I'm not a fan of Teams voice, but let's ignore that. That's not part of this webinar. But it could be, are you selling voice? Are you selling internet connectivity to a client, and then you're not selling the voice? Well, that's just another over-the-top service. Let's add on top. It's, again, what else can we add? Let's add the steak knives this time instead of the fries. Like, what else can you keep adding on top that just increases those gross margin dollars on every customer? Because again, it's easy to sell another service to an existing customer because the cost of sales is so much lower. You're already invoicing the customer every single month anyway. So adding another service onto that invoice has a low cost to produce that invoice every single month. So all of those just keep increasing the spend from each customer.
Goes back to James's point about quantifying when we're talking about whitespace. You only need 80% of your customers to add that extra on each month.
Yep. And that also ties down again into before about whether you need new customers for your growth. And we said, no, you don't. But it also, on the other side of that coin for a second, anytime you do get a new customer, if you've got 15 or 20 or 30 things that you can sell a client over time, that's absolutely fantastic, because anytime a new customer comes on, you might sell them 4 or 5 things in your initial opportunity or your initial onboarding of that customer. But then you've got a massive pipeline ready for that client over the next couple of years to increase their spend, because they need all of this anyway, whether they like it or not, or they're spending it with someone else. So why not take over the connectivity? Why not take over the telephony? Why not take over all of these types of things? Because they're paying someone else to do it anyway. Why not pay you to do it? Sorry, I'm getting a bit passionate about this as well.
No, look like you're getting passionate about it.
This is why it's not hard to see how easy it is to potentially double your business. Like if I've worked with enough MSPs and small technology businesses that, you know, your average $3 million MSP typically has 100 clients on their books, and their top 5 to 8 clients generate 80% of the revenue or margin. So clearly there's a whole heap of opportunity in the other 95% of the client base that we haven't tapped into, purely because we don't deliberately do this. We don't deliberately go and have the conversations of, you need this because, you need this because, and have that rhythm and that discipline to keep cycling through and take the clients on a journey, because we don't really value sales. We don't like to do sales, and we think it's a dirty thing. But actually, if you look, I've experienced this enough. If you actually have those A-class clients that we've been talking about that engage with you, and they buy all your stuff, how much better are their businesses for it? How much better does their technology run? How much more productive are their people compared to, say, your D client that isn't engaging with technology and it doesn't have all the best practices? It's night and day. So you've got to be more confident, and you've got to buy into that passion and be confident that what you're selling is actually helpful for their businesses, and you're not selling anymore. But you've got to go in with the mindset of you need to do this, or it's just never going to happen. And it becomes worse if you start hiring people, because then you're paying all these people not to produce. It's conflicting with you, all these sort of things. It just starts with mindset.
Yeah, and just to tie all that in, for the people that don't know our platform just yet, we do have a tool that helps with your cross-selling, and it will bring up a very quick list for you guys. If you wanted to sell back up to people that already have Microsoft 365, we create those lists for you that you can create opportunities and push them back into your own PSA that you use. I need to charge my laptop, guys. And it's a really good way, giving, if you're bringing new BDMs in or account managers, giving them the tools to actually be confident to find the opportunities in your current clients. Okay. And bringing us to the end, we thank you so much, Fuzzy and James, for a great conversation. I hope everyone enjoyed it. For our current customers that are on board, reach out to me if you need any help with training or support from the platform. And if you're new and you want to get some more information, please feel free to scan the QR code, book in a demo. Alternatively, you can reach out to me as well and we can arrange it. And lucky last, any questions? I know there's been a few that have dwindled in through our meeting, but anyone have anything at the moment? Please feel free to raise your hand.
I think that as well. If anyone got any questions after this, I'd say email through to Jess and Jess can contact us, or I'm sure you can find both James and I pretty easily out on the interwebs. But yeah, look, if you've got any questions, ask go from there.
Thanks. So we got a few coming in. Just quickly stop sharing just so we can read them.
Well, while anyone's working out, if they've got any questions, just on the point of setting up your salespeople with tools, it's more important than it should be because salespeople are lazy. And I say that in a caring way. They want to just get out. They're people-focused people. They're not process-driven. They often can't sit there and create their own spreadsheets and things like that. They're good out in front of talking to people. So while we shouldn't have to, it's actually an important thing that we should put the effort in to when we're bringing on salespeople to make their job easier, just so they can go talk to people. That's their job, is talk to people, generate the outcome of the sale. And this is where a lot of owners fall into the trap of, once they do start hiring salespeople, irrelevant of the type, they don't know how to manage them. They fall into try and manage them like a tech and ticket by ticket, rather than going, well, how much money do you need to generate? Well, are you generating that or not? It's a very different approach, and you've probably gone through this journey as well, Fuzz.
Yep, certainly.
Perfect. All right, guys. Please feel free to shoot any of us questions. It's been great. Thank you for joining our first one as well. It'll be first of many for BeeCastle, and hopefully more with Fuzzy and James.
Have a great day, everyone.
You too. Bye, guys.
Thanks for having me.
See you.